As President Joe Biden tries to undo the damage that that his predecessor did to America's immigration system, three problems are getting in the way. The nation's existing laws are outmoded and overly restrictive. The United States hasn't devoted the resources necessary to review the individual cases, and the Biden administration has little control over when the migrants will arrive at the border and seek entry. Soon after taking office, Biden moved to dismantle Donald Trump's nastiest immigration and border enforcement policies. Biden has lifted Trump's ban on travelers from certain Muslim countries. He halted the construction of a wasteful border wall, and he promised to protect enrollees in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program when Trump was ready to deport, and launched a task force to reunite the migrant families separated at the border. Yesterday, he proposed reform legislation that, if enacted, it would give undocumented immigrants now in the U.S. a route to becoming citizens. In the meantime, the U.S. border is coming under stress. Biden's more humane policies have led to rumors that the U.S.-Mexico border is now essentially open, but both for asylum seekers who show up at ports of entry and for others who cross unlawfully. Smugglers are eager to spread that idea. For the moment, the United States humanitarian interest lies not just in showing kindness to those who reach the border, but also in stemming the flow of people who undertake the journey in the first place. The Trump administration defined itself with its efforts to shut down immigration, and Biden largely defined his presidential candidacy as a repudiation of Trump, but ironically, the new administration finds itself imploring potential migrants not to head north. Now is not the time to come, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said last week. The vast majority of people will be turned away. Customs and Border Protection reported nearly 78,000 encounters in January at the southwest border alone. That is 78,000 apprehensions or deportations of would-be migrants, or would-be immigrants, basically. That's nearly double the figure for the same month last year and the highest for January in a decade. If this current pattern holds, the U.S. is on track for more than 1 million encounters in 2021 alone. We see a Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf, and we just now have the tropical storm force winds on the coast, an immigration shelter worker recently had said to CBS News. As matters stand, the U.S. government doesn't have enough immigration judges and attorneys to evaluate asylum claims, and existing Border Patrol stations and other facilities are inadequate for processing applicants during a pandemic. People who are fleeing persecution and violence deserve what they call refuge. But not every border crosser qualifies for asylum. Determining who is eligible takes effort and resources, and the central challenge is that building capacity to efficiency and fairly process asylum claims. The claims necessary will take time. Alan Burson, the former head of the Customs and Border Protection under President Barack Obama, had said, "The reforming systems, while they are processing large and increasing numbers of new arrivals, can result in a crushing and self-defeating burden. But in the meantime, even as conservative lawmakers and faux news commentators stir up fears of would-be immigrants, many in the Democratic Party are deeply uncomfortable with the standard tactics of border enforcement. The immigration rights activists that are dismayed by Obama's enforcement efforts criticized him as a deporter-in-chief. The cruelties of the Trump era pushed the party's rhetoric farther to the left, and many Democratic candidates during the 2020 presidential primary season had supported decriminalization of unlawful border crossings, and activists and officials on the party's progressive flank support the outright abolition of immigration and customs enforcement. And both positions, however, are unpopular among an American public that generally supports immigration. Biden, I'm sorry, not Biden. Perhaps not coincidentally, the candidate who won the Democratic nomination in the presidency had took more moderate stances. Now Biden has the tricky problem of scoring his own sense of empathy and the expectations of his party's base with the duty to protect American borders under existing laws. Under Trump, the federal government failed to build up its own capacity to manage migration surges and arbitrate individual cases. The Trump team tried simply to keep migrants out. When the coronavirus pandemic arrived, Trump had invoked the CDC's authority to expel any border crossing. Although Trump failed to get Mexico to pay for his useless wall, he managed to bully that country in 2019 into taking on responsibility via the so-called Remain in Mexico program for holding asylum seekers who sought to enter the U.S. Mexico's patience is waning, and the dangerously cold weather conditions befalling people that were housed in tents just south of the border this week and one more reminder of Washington's failure to manage basic logistics. Even before the arrival of a new surge of migrants, only now in the U.S., is beginning to accept asylum seekers previously enrolled in Trump's Remain in Mexico program. That program has 25,000 active cases, which will be handled at about a rate of only 300 a day. The Biden administration needs to buy time, communicating to potential new migrants that the border is still controlled, and keeping the CDC order in place for now. Mexico's president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, is also warning against false rumors that the doors are open in the United States at the same time. The U.S. has to make better preparations for how to handle those who do arrive at the border. And rumors and the hopes of people seeking a better life are hard to quell, but Biden will have more maneuvering room, both operationally and politically, if he succeeds in signaling to migrants that they should not travel to the border immediately, and that an easing of Trump's policies is not the same as an unconditional welcome.